All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are looking at a truly fascinating, and I have to say, pretty radical interpretation of a famous Quranic story. The source material we're exploring today asks a wild question. What if a well-known verse isn't just a parable, but a precise mathematical formula for resurrection itself? They call it the resurrection equation. And the claim is, the proof has been hiding in plain sight all along.
So it all starts with the prophet Ibrāhīm, and he asks God this just profound question. But according to our source, this is not a moment of doubt. Not at all. Ibrāhīm's faith is rock solid. He's asking for something different. He wants to see the process, to witness the mechanism of resurrection, so his heart can reach that state of stable, unshakable certainty.
And this right here, this is the pivot for everything we're about to unpack. The source argues that what happens next isn't just a nice story with a moral. Nope, it's a step-by-step instructional protocol. It's a live demonstration of a fundamental cosmic law, laid out for Ibrāhīm and for all of us to actually understand.
So what is this protocol? Well, the central argument, the core idea, is that God's response to Ibrāhīm maps perfectly onto a specific mathematical form, an equation that, this model claims, governs the entire process of destruction, dispersion, and a guaranteed return. And here it is. The source argues that this divine instruction takes the form of a cubic function. It's presented not as some loose metaphor, but as the explicit resurrection operator, a formula where every single part, every coefficient, corresponds directly to a step in the story that Ibrāhīm is about to witness. Now, think about the shift in perspective this demands. This model takes resurrection out of the realm of a singular, unknowable miracle and reframes it as a lawful, predictable, repeatable process. The idea is that for any system to be totally dismantled and then be guaranteed to come back, it has to follow this specific mathematical structure. You know, the elegance of this whole interpretation is how clean the mapping is. Those 4 birds that Ibrāhīm is told to take, they aren't just a random number. According to the source, they represent the 4 distinct coefficients of this equation, the 4 degrees of freedom that this law needs to operate. So, let's break them down. Okay, so this table is basically the blueprint for the whole idea. You can see how each piece of the equation is mapped to a Quranic concept and a specific action in the story. You've got the cubic term as collapse, the quadratic as separation, the linear term as guidance, and the constant as resolution. This is where it gets really good. Let's dig into each one, starting with the most powerful player in the whole equation. First up, the O coefficient, the cubic term. This is said to represent a concept called Taghūt. You can think of it as an overwhelming, dominant force that just pushes things way past their breaking point. In the story, this is the cutting up of the birds. See, mathematically, the highest order term, the cubic, always dominates at the extremes. It represents a force so powerful that it ensures the system is truly broken, way beyond any simple self-repair. It is total structural collapse. Next, we've got the B coefficient, the quadratic term. The source links this to a concept called Razim, or Iblīs, which here means a boundary or a point of separation. This is the placement of the bird pieces on different mountains. Now, what's really key here is that the source calls this the last reversible layer. It's a point of duality, of choice. It's a boundary where return is still possible, but make no mistake, separation is now a reality. Then comes the C coefficient, the linear term. This is mapped to Rahīm, or rushed, merciful guidance, a truth decree. In the story, this is the calling of the birds. And this part is absolutely critical. The source says this isn't a force that rebuilds anything. It's more like a resonant recall. It's a proportional, directional pull that only aligns the parts that stayed coherent through the previous stages. It's guidance as a straight, clear signal, not a brute force reconstruction. And finally, we have D, the constant, the resolution. This is the birds returning, fully alive. See, mathematically, the constant is the part of the equation that isn't touched by the variable x. It's invariant. It represents the identity residue, the core essence that survives, even when the physical form is completely annihilated. And if that residue, that constant D, is not 0, then according to this model, resurrection isn't just possible, it's a guaranteed outcome. So, why this function? Why does the source insist that resurrection has to be a cubic system? Well, it's because it has to fulfill a very specific and very demanding set of requirements for any system to be able to come back from the absolute brink. I mean, just think about it for a second.
For any process to be called a law of resurrection, it would have to solve some massive problems, right? It has to allow for the form to be genuinely destroyed. The parts have to lose their location, they have to be scattered, and despite all of that, its return has to be guaranteed, and it has to follow a predictable rule.
And this slide just nails why, in this model, simpler functions can't cut it. Linear or quadratic systems, according to the source, they just don't have the complexity. They can't handle both total collapse and a guaranteed return. The cubic function is presented as the absolute minimum structure that has all the pieces you need: the dominance, the boundary, the corrective pole, and that all-important invariant identity.
Which brings us right back to where we started, back to the number 4. It's not just 4 birds. According to this interpretation, it's 4 because a cubic function has 4 coefficients. These are the 4 essential degrees of freedom that define this entire cosmic law of return. So what's the big takeaway here? What's the final provocative idea? Well, when you look at this story through this mathematical lens, it stops being just a story. It becomes a process. It becomes a clear, repeatable 4-step rhythm. And here it is, that 4-beat rhythm. It's a cycle. First, Taghūt destroys the form. Second, Razim separates the components. Third, Razim aligns what's left. And finally, the resolution, the preserved identity, returns. The point here is that this isn't just a story about birds. It's a blueprint for a fundamental law of existence. This quote from the source, I think, just perfectly captures the whole argument. The idea is that this verse isn't asking for blind faith in some unknowable miracle. It's presenting a worked demonstration, an executable proof. It's showing you, not just telling you. And so we end with this question, posed by the source material itself. It's an invitation, really. An invitation to engage with the text not just as a book you read, but as a system you can hold, you can test, and you can understand. A system that, who knows, might just contain the very equations that govern existence itself.